Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. Today, we're going to talk about a interesting little topic that's kind of started to swirl around the 40K and greater 40K communities, specifically revolving around Games Workshop. Now, full disclosure, this is the third time I've tried to make this video, and I'm going to just get through it and plow through it as best I can. But I was really trying to get over the struggle of figuring out the best way to frame this because just like, for example, Arch said in his now rather famous video about the state of 40K, the end of 40K as we really know it, and the rise of effectively an attempt at, I would almost call it popping or popularizing 40K, and all of the other settings around Games Workshop and the general destruction of the old guard and the old fans and effective even newer fans because Games Workshop really doesn't want them. Um, I was trying to find a way to properly frame my feelings on the matter because one of the big problems is that as a BFG fan and somebody who hasn't played 40K for many, many, many years, we saw all this shit coming 15 plus years ago. We are beyond jaded at this point, and watching Arch's video, and again, Arch made a really great video and making a very succinct point to people who may not know the truth, but we saw the decline of Games Workshop decades ago. It's ridiculous how long ago we actually saw this coming, and of course, at the time, nobody believed us. And I give Arch absolute credit for the prediction, but I'm not going to make any kind of statement to say that that was unique to Arch. Many people made that claim. We just didn't have YouTube channels at the time. Um, I had a whole tirade about what's responsible, who's at fault, why it's, why it's bad. Maybe it isn't as bad as it looks. But in the end, I realized that all I was doing was ranting about my ancient beef with not Games Workshop, but the fans. And I think it's safe to say that even beyond elements like, the idiots at Sig Marxism or some of the worst things that can possibly imagine come out of the fan art community for 40K. Uh, the train of thought wreck. Despite all of these things, the worst things that come out of 40K are always generally by its own fans and usually by its own ultra super fans. So watching them get their sacred cow finally destroyed because our sacred cow had already been destroyed a long time ago, or at least I tried to, is a little bit cathartic. But what we really should be talking about is the opportunity that this now presents. There are an awful lot of extraordinarily jaded and very, very upset 40K players out there. All of their cool fan content is getting nailed by aggressive lawsuits that, generally speaking, have no basis in any sort of legal reality, but most people don't have the money to go up against Games Workshop and argue their case. I mean, one of the recent cases was against a Battletech channel because they dared to use the word Warhammer. How very evil of them. Yeah, obviously GW dropped that suit quickly because if they didn't, they would start losing their other cases for the sake of frivolous lawsuits. But most of these people don't have the money, time, or resources to fight GW. And, we can bring up the topic of things like Brava Alpha Busa. Now, I actually disagree with Arch about Brava Alpha Busa. I think what he did was cowardly. He should have finished the work that he was doing and then moved on to something else. I have a personal problem with submitting to fear. And Brava Alpha Busa, if there was ever to be a lawsuit, the community would have risen up to support him, and he would have definitively won his lawsuit. It's true. Arch is right about one thing about that. He would have been the last one to be sued. This is true. But that does not mean that they would have been successful. And I actually respect people a lot more for standing up to a bully than running into a corner. The argument was made, well, now he's making his own brand. I find his new brand to be honest, banal, boring and completely lacking any of the charm that was present in Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device. Satire of 40K is one of the most crucial elements of 40K, and this is one of those reasons why I like to go on Twitter and troll people, especially Space Marine fans, telling them that all of the Gulliman Yvrain softcore porn out there has better story writing than their OC Space Marine chapter, which is still true. But let's talk about the opportunity that this presents. When people are getting tired of 40K, either through Games Workshop's, exhaustion with dealing with their terrible business practices towards their fans, or because the new edition annihilated the value of their army, which happens all the time, it is time then for people of the Battlefleet Gothic community to step forward. Also, I'm going to actually extend this to the Epic Armageddon group, too. Epic Armageddon and Battlefleet Gothic need to step up and say, listen, guys, we know you love this setting. We know you love this genre. Why don't you play a game where your battles actually have meaning? Okay? So the sales pitch that I typically have is, listen, 40K is ostensibly a skirmish game. 2,000 points of a battle of 40K. I mean, that really doesn't apply anymore because they're doing anything they can to remove the point system. Is one assault point for this battle. That's one tiny fraction of a conflict in Battlefleet Gothic. Simply put, you can't invade a world if you don't have space dominance, and that's what these battles are about. These are the actual important conflicts, and Epic Armageddon can make the same argument. A 40K game is a skirmish. Epic Armageddon is the war. So this is the opportunity for us to grow our community. How do you do that? What is the best way to go to that jaded 40K player and get them into Epic Armageddon or get them into Battlefleet Gothic? And it's very simple of, hey, Games Workshop hasn't touched our rules in 15 years, and they never will. Why? Because, simply put, there's no profit in Battlefleet Gothic anymore, and every moment that passes by and every failed attempt to make games at that scale means that Epic Armageddon is right behind us. Because, quite frankly, we are a hobby that has been completely and totally dominated by 3D printing for the last 5 to 7 years. We ultimately are immune to Games Workshop. If they try to move into our hobby and create a new Battlefleet Gothic and do anything but make new ships of existing patterns, we will simply ignore them. Because if they try to change the scale, they increase the size of the ships, which is the most likely scenario, or even decrease the size of the ships. It doesn't matter. We will look at it, we will reject it, and we will move on. And the new Battlefleet Gothic will die on the vine because this community, the Battlefleet Gothic community, broadly speaking, is highly organized, and they are very, very unified in our collective displeasure at Games Workshop. Now, some examples of this are, like, let me give you my personal biggest beef with Games Workshop in relation to Battlefleet Gothic. The principal problem that I have right now is that we have this brand new race, the Votan. Brand new on quotations, they're obviously space squats, but we have no knowledge of their ships. They have no knowledge of their weapons technology in space. They are described as having huge mercantile battle fleets with no descriptions of what the hell they are. So we have to do the work for them. That bugs the hell out of me. Games Workshop's lore writers are slacking, along with their rules writers too, because they need to actually start forming a effective and careful understanding of how they do things in that area so they are consistent with both the game and the lore. But they're not. Then they've created some really stupid lore. Beyond that, their attempt to create Battlefleet Gothic the video game was a resounding failure. Battlefleet Gothic Armada 1 and 2 were very pretty. I love using the images for videos and such because visually it's a stunning game. But all they had to do was not make it bumper cars, and it would have been a smash hit. Do you want to know what would have happened if Battlefleet Gothic Armada utilized the exact rules of Battlefleet Gothic, which we already know are possible, and I would crucially point out, have already been done for the most part, thank you to the mobile game? Do you want to know what would have happened? I would have never made this channel. I would have never made the Discord servers. I would have not done any of this because, quite frankly, I would have had Battlefleet Gothic in a beautiful digital format with lots of cool special effects, and they didn't do that. They utterly failed to communicate and connect with the miniature community, and they lost out on a lot of money. So, to reiterate my point, this is the opportunity that you go to your friends who are really pissed at GW and say, hey, you can still have fun in 40K setting without giving Games Workshop a dime of your money. You can play Battlefleet Gothic, you can work with the community to make new rules as needed, and Games Workshop will leave you alone. And the price of the miniatures drops to incredibly reasonable levels. So don't take this as as a situation where everything is awful, everything is terrible, and the setting that I love is gone. No, change the game. Take control of your money, take control of your fun, go play a better game system that has actual relevance in the grand scheme of things. Go play Battlefleet Gothic, go play Epic Armageddon. Play real games, not just basically a gambling game that you throw money to Games Workshop and you may get a good mini in the future. So I'm going to really push for this community. All of us have that friend who's starting to get really jaded with 40K, and tell him, hey man, let's play something different. Let's play something that you can still love your army and you can actually effectively compete against every other army because Games Workshop hasn't touched the rules in 15 years. And that usually will be enough to convince them to at least try, and I have never encountered a 40K player in my life that hasn't enjoyed Battlefleet Gothic, and in many cases, they have looked at me and said, I don't play 40K anymore, because Battlefleet Gothic is so much better of a system. And to be blunt, if this were still between 4th and 7th ed, I'd be like, there's some truth to that, but I think 40K is a good system. Modern day era, no way. 40K is a terrible game. It is a abysmal system, and it no longer has any of the charm, any of the humor, any of the immersion that the old systems have. But Battlefleet Gothic has the charm, the immersion, even the goofiness in certain places of the old systems. And if they say, I freaking hate the lore, you carefully remind them that Battlefleet Gothic, the majority of its lore, is based squarely in roughly between 3rd and 4th edition, which means, in reality, the best era, really. It's I would say, end of 3rd, 4th, 5th, some of 6th. Okay, it just when the Tau started to get questionably, basically got their own little injection of grimdark. So kind of the height, the apex of the lore. The only thing that we didn't really gain advantage of on is the new Necron lore, which I'm going to be a heretic and say new Necron lore is vastly better than old Necron lore. Okay, quick aside. We already have an NPC race for 40K. We don't need 2, so making them Space Tomb Kings was a good idea. Anyway, getting back to the point, this is our opportunity to help grow our community. And I know it's parasitism off of 40K, but simply put, Games Workshop doesn't deserve our money. So we are going to go and instead of giving them money, we're going to have our brilliant 3D modelers make ships on their own. We will print them out, and then we will play our game, and Games Workshop can pound sand. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all again in the next video.